Hello and welcome back to Hump Day Hormones. We are on November the 5th, 2025, and we are starting our head to toe menopause series.
Yes.
I know, I'm so excited. Like, we've never had a series really. I mean, we had the gut health, sort of GI type series, but yeah, like perimenopausal series kind of. But
I
this
love
is
that
gonna
we're
be,
going head to
yeah.
toe and getting like specialty people in, to kind of really talk about their subset of what they do and starting up at the top with the brain. And we have Chelsea Preston here, who's a nurse practitioner here in Little Rock and going to tell us all about brain things.
Yeah, so I'm just going to introduce Chelsea real quick. She is a nurse practitioner. She works at CHI St. Vincent Neurology Clinic. That's in the Little Rock Diagnostic Clinic, which is always kind of weird to me that it's here on the campus of Baptist Health, but it is a St. Vincent Neurology Clinic. And she specializes in headache disorders. Just a little background. She grew up in North Little Rock. Went to Fayetteville, the U of A up there for her undergraduate, and then went to UAMS, which is, for listeners who aren't from here, kind of the University of Arkansas Medical School. They have nursing school there. That's where she graduated from nursing school. And then went on to get her nurse practitioner license. So she is married with 3 kids. They are 9, 5, and 3. Maybe that's why our headache specialist.
I mean,
Still have them kids.
I'm right there with you, like that age of kids. Like,
yes.
Yeah.
Factories.
If you did not have a headache before, you might. But yeah, she started working in neurology in 2010. First as a clinical care assistant and then as an RN on the neurology unit at UAMS. But then she started as an APN in 2018 in the multiple sclerosis clinic. And then she was seeing just a ton of migraines and got her headache certification from the National Headache Foundation, and became, more knowledgeable on headaches. So I think that's awesome. Like, how did you get into that and decide that you wanted to sort of specialize there?
So I started out in the multiple sclerosis clinic at UAMS, and so many of my patients had migraines, and I didn't really know how to help them. And so that's when I decided that I just needed to be more knowledgeable about how to help my patients. And so I got my headache certification through the National Headache Foundation, and the rest is history.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's how I got into menopause and perimenopause and hormones. That's what my patients were coming in with. And so I think, yeah, you just figure out, your patients tell you what they need, right? And then you figure out how to go help them. And so I have a special place in my heart for anybody who teaches, because I think obviously that's where like big change is going to come down the road, is when we're teaching other people. And so I do love that you were a clinical instructor at the nursing school at UAMS.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Maybe after the kids get a little bit older, I can go back and do that again.
Yeah. And I also think, like, when you're teaching people stuff, that you have to understand it on a whole different level. I mean, that's what the podcast has done for me. The whole see one, do one, teach one type thing. So, and then we get referrals from you all the time just for hormone stuff. So we know that you have an appreciation for hormones because you send people here to talk to us about it. But how much do you feel like that you get asked about hormones, or how they're playing in, or their importance in your practice?
So patients don't typically say, "Hey, I need my hormones checked."
Right.
But I mean, I bet most of my patients are women that have migraines. I do have some male, but most of them are women. And I would say 99.9% of them, mention their menstrual cycle, or, different times of the month, that they're more moody, or their migraines, or they can't think clearly, or all the things. And so I try to fix their headaches, and I send them over to you guys.
Yeah, we appreciate that. And I feel like once you're tuned in to like what hormonal symptoms may go with migraine, then you can't help but notice as they're telling the story, and you can't help but like okay, you said they're happening once a month for 3 days in a row, it's like, once you're tuned into that, then you're just kind of always going to be drawn down that path. But so, yeah, today we're going to focus on menopause and the brain, memory, mood, mental clarity, and migraines. So all the M things. I know. I love a good alliteration like that. But, and so just so that we understand, women, somebody said this the other day, it was some podcast I was listening to, like, women are not small men,
Right.
and
like men with boobs and uteruses.
yeah, and our brains are wired differently. And so women's brains are different than men's. They age differently than men's. And I think one of the biggest things there is that women have this steep hormonal drop with menopause. And so, men have a more gradual and very smaller amplitude, like, decrease in their testosterone over their lifetime. But that doesn't even start until later for men. That testosterone decrease starts earlier in women. And then it's just like a freaking cliff after menopause that falls off. And so, a lot of those symptoms that really start in the brain with sleep and anxiety, mood changes, hot flashes, even, all of that stuff is starting in our brain, and it's a neurological phenomenon, but that's all going to get so much worse without hormones. So it's a neuroendocrine system in that our hormones are talking to our brain, and our brain is driving what our hormone production and function and all that type of stuff. So they are very intimately connected and working like in that bidirectional way. And so we can't ignore that fact. And that's why we felt like it was so important to have a brain person on here. Yeah.
And I think talking about these hormones as like brain hormones and overall like body hormones makes it make sense. As opposed to whenever we just say like our sex hormones, that just makes you think about like reproduction and whatnot. They like estrogen receptors are everywhere, testosterone receptor, it's all over the place. So like it makes sense once you understand that. Like, no wonder I have brain fog and can't think and can't remember things because I'm not making estrogen anymore or going through perimenopause.
Yeah, I think we have to get away from the thought that, women have ovaries and our hormones are from our ovaries and they're just controlling our ovaries and our uterus and our boobs. Like, we have to get away from that. They are affecting every single part of our body. And so we've kind of gotten away from doing our favorite little segment, which is Did You Know?
I don't know why we do this. Occasionally we get away from it and then we bring it back and we're like, oh my God, why have we not been doing it?
I know. And I wrote this podcast mostly on the way to and from Fayetteville. I was in the car. My husband was driving and I kept saying to him, did you know? Da, 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 da. And I was telling him stuff. And so it just made me remember, like, that's how this segment started, because I would always be like, Courtney, did you know?
Yes.
And so we just started this whole like kind of one of those things that you learn as you're digging deep through this. Even though I've been doing this for 15 years, you still learn so much. And so just like we were talking about just now, I think it is so frustrating, and literally I was like floored, and this was what I was talking to my husband about on the way to and from Fayetteville, that it was not until 1993 that the NIH, so the National Institute of Health, the government basically that's funding most of our scientific trials, in 1993, like I was 13 years old, that was not that long ago, that they mandated that women had to be included in research studies. So that we were realizing, okay, women are not small men and we have to include them in research studies. So women notoriously were excluded from, research studies due to hormone fluctuations. And they felt like that was a big confounding factor. Like, we can't have women on their period or essentially surging their estrogen while we're in the middle of our research study. What if that, conflicts and makes the data too hard to interpret? So they just excluded women from research studies. and they, I mean, you could include them if you wanted to, but you weren't mandated to include them until 1993.
That's crazy.
Like,
That's
I can't, I mean, anyways, so we now know that and we are doing better. But, and then
Crazy.
this is another one that I was screaming across the car about. In 1996, I was learning to drive a car and I was 16 years old, but it was then in 1996, it was discovered that estrogen was also a brain hormone and not just a reproductive hormone. So they confirmed that estrogen receptors were widespread throughout the brain, and then kind of went from there to prove that estrogen functions as a neuroactive and neuroprotective hormone. So, I mean, like we talk about all the time, like, why don't people understand this and all? But like, it is pretty new in the scientific world. It wasn't until 1996 that we even knew that estrogen was a brain hormone. So,
That they were like actually
but like,
receptors in the brain.
how could we know that? We weren't even including us in studies. So
It's like as soon as they did, and then 3 years later they come out, they're like, oh, actually there are receptors in the brain. Estrogen receptors in the brain.
yeah,
I realized that.
actually, once we started studying this species, we realized. I know my husband had to tell me to calm. He was like, "Okay, calm down," because I was
These are the things
literally
we get hopped up about.
getting
We're like
so mad about it.
yeah. And so, yeah, here's another one. Women are more likely to have anxiety, depression, migraines, and dementia, and twice as likely to experience anxiety and depressive disorders. So there's a huge, I forget what the statistic is. I should have written it down. But like between the ages of 45 and 55, the amount of women that like get on an SSRI or something, you know, which is fine, but you know, it may be that they need hormones too. But there's just a massive like mood shift, whether it's anxiety, depression, whatever, during that time in our lives.
Nearly 2/3 of Alzheimer's patients are women, and they used to think it was because women live longer, but now they're finding that it's because of hormones.
Yeah, I know. It used to, just, well, again, because we weren't studying them and because we didn't know it was a neuroactive hormone. I mean, it makes sense why we didn't really understand that connection, but that is becoming much more like of a widespread accepted thinking now. And then this is right down Chelsea's lane here, but 18 to 25% of women experience migraines at some point in their life. And that is 3 times as high as what it would be in men. So we're talking about women being 3 times more likely than men to have migraines after puberty. So,
and you were saying, Chelsea, you mainly see women in your clinic?
I mean, not that I will only see women.
Yes, most of your patients are women.
Yeah, with migraines.
Yeah.
And I, whenever they are in their perimenopause period, that's when they, start having horrible migraines. Well, that's when you got kids and most people have a full-time job.
Totally.
Like, we don't have time to be laying in bed in the dark.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and that's also, you probably see a fair amount of this too. Maybe women who've just been told that they need to stress less, or all that kind of stuff as a form of treatment. Which, do we all need to be less stressed out? Sure. Would that be helpful in multiple areas? Sure. But like, that's not the reason for your migraines, and it's not the treatment for them all the way around either.
Yeah. Yep. And there's things that we can do to help.
Right. Besides just telling them to go take a nap and
do yoga.
Yeah. So, and then I think this is interesting. They have found, now that we study them, that women have better neuroplasticity, which is like the ability to reorganize those little synaptic connections in your brain, and that women recover better after a mild traumatic brain injury. And then that they see that this benefit kind of disappears after menopause. And so it may be somewhat that estrogen that is responsible for that neuroplasticity. So how we are able to reorganize that stuff up there. And then we always talk about this, but there is a 14 to 17 year gap in research and medical guidelines. So doctors like medical guidelines. lawyers like medical guidelines. Like, we need it to be written down, and this is what's accepted, and there was FDA approval and all this, so that we have a leg to stand on legally if something goes bad. And so it's really hard. Like, we are now figuring this out, and we have all of this research and all of this data, but that doesn't mean that we have a clear-cut accepted medical guideline like that estrogen prevents dementia or that estrogen helps with migraine. I mean, we may not have like clear-cut guidelines there, but that doesn't mean that we can't still be helpful in that space. You just may have to be comfortable practicing without a guideline. And so that most doctors are not going to be that way. And so that's why there's not a lot of people that sort of step into this space. But I think we have to use what we have, kind of common sense, and not wait 17 years to get that written down on a piece of paper by some committee. So yeah, and then let's just do a little background as far as estrogen in the brain. So estrogen is key for energy production in the brain, sort of like how those little brain cells are going to use our glucose. And that's how all of our cells get energy. So declining estrogen levels in the brain can lead to symptoms like brain fog, forgetfulness, anxiety, depression, and kind of those like word finding issues, which is the same as brain fog. Like, I know that you were saying, Chelsea, that you see patients all the time and they're like, I think I'm getting dementia.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure that there's not an underlying issue that could explain. And then if, they don't have migraines or they don't have anything that would explain their memory issues or brain fog, then I can kind of go down the path of rolling out Alzheimer's or dementia.
Yeah. I mean, we see patients all the time. They're like, my brain fog, like, I cannot work. Like, I feel like I'm going to get fired from my job, or I feel like I'm going to have to quit my job or something like that. Like, I cannot hold it all together, and like all of this cognitive function type complaints. And they're like, I literally am considering going to the memory center and get tested for Alzheimer's. And I mean, maybe some people really do need to do that, but some people were like, okay, hey, let's pump the brakes and look at like more common things first. Like, yes, you're 45. Maybe we have some estrogen decline and things like that. So, somewhere I saw it compared, like, estrogen was like brain fertilizer. And I love that. It's like it enhances blood flow, supports that neuroplasticity that we were talking about. It protects against inflammation, which I know we were talking about earlier, like all the inflammatory things in our diet and just our earth that we live in. Really, it's hard to get away from that, but estrogen kind of naturally protects against some of that and the oxidative stress and all that. And then estrogen influences your serotonin and dopamine regulation. We've talked about that multiple other episodes on this podcast. Glucose metabolism, which is going to be energy for neurons, synaptic plasticity, which is going to be the ability to remodel, which involves like your ability to lay down memories. That's kind of remodeling in a way. And then your ability to learn something new, you're going to have to remodel that up there. And then cerebral brain flow and even like amyloid processing. So you can speak more to that, Chelsea, but like kind of the formation of those amyloid plaques, which is eventually what leads to Alzheimer's.
Yes. So they say that you start building the amyloid plaques in the brain up to 30 years before you have significant memory problems.
Wow.
So that's where the testing, thankfully now we have biomarkers, just a blood test. It's called p-tau 217. And the new recommendation is that it's done a lot earlier than whenever you come in your 60s or 70s and are saying that you have memory problems.
Yeah.
So what qualifies you to get that testing? Like, can you just do it just based on symptoms, or do you have to like meet criteria to get it?
So I haven't had any patients come back and tell me, my insurance didn't pay for it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Obviously check with your insurance company before.
Right.
But they're with the proper diagnosis code.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, anytime I do it, I go ahead and do an MMSE.
Okay.
Just a little memory test. My nurse does it for me.
Yeah.
And that way, if they come back and say,
Yeah.
you shouldn't have done that. But,
Yeah.
and I have had some patients have a high p-tau217 and they go on for the other testing and they don't have Alzheimer's. But
Oh, okay.
so
Yeah.
most of the time it's a very reliable biomarker.
Wow.
And I'm sure this is one of those things where there's multiple things that lead to amyloid plaque formation, right? It's, oxidative stress and inflammation. Like, no one ever is suggesting like estrogen is all you needed, right? Because I mean, otherwise, like, men just wouldn't get Alzheimer's like ever. But I mean, estrogen decline, we know, is linked to like, the formation of amyloid plaques and less like energy in our neurons and things like that. So it is one piece of that puzzle, and it is such a modifiable, easy to fix part of the puzzle. It's like, why are we leaving that untapped?
But I am a nerd, and I have a spreadsheet with all the patients that have an elevated biomarker test, and I bet 75% or more are women.
Yeah.
So I do think that there's a correlation.
I mean, for sure we know there is. I mean, and like even in other parts of the brain, like, I mean, now we have an FDA approved medication that targets like our candy neurons. We know that's where those hot flashes start. Candy is KNDY, not candy like Snickers, Halloween. But candy, that's just what they're called. Those are in the hypothalamus. They regulate body temperature. We know that those abnormally start to fire off when you take estrogen away from them. That's why we get hot flashes. And now we have FDA approved medication that specifically targets that. But think about that. We have FDA approved medication right now. That means 14 to 17 years ago, we knew that. And so, I mean, that's what's frightening. And what we're saying now is we're learning all this about the amyloid plaque and all the things. And we know estrogen's playing into that. Are we going to wait 17 years for somebody to tell us, like, get on estrogen to prevent amyloid plaque? I mean, I'm not, but I just think that's so interesting. And then we can't do a podcast about the brain and not talk about Dr. Lisa Mosconi, because I feel like she's been such a giant in this area. She wrote the book, The Menopause Brain. She's a neuroscientist at Cornell. She wrote the first paper on estrogen in the brain, and it was, just this kind of blew everybody's mind when it came out, but she used scans to show that estrogen receptors in the brain increase after menopause, almost like they're upregulating, like as a way to try to, like, maybe if I just put more receptors out there, I'll find some estrogen somewhere. Like, your brain is trying to adapt. And I'll post it this week at some point, those pictures. But I mean, you don't have to be any kind of scientific anything to notice the color difference on these PET scans that they're using that light up, in the menopause brain versus the premenopause brain. And it's sort of frightening. Like, your brain is screaming that it wants some estrogen.
Yeah. And I think even just looking at like labs and looking at FSH levels, as those like climb and climb and climb, like if they're in the hundreds, it's like, oh my gosh, your brain is literally trying so hard to find some estrogen in your body.
I know those women that are in here with the FSH of 140, and they're like, I have terrible brain fog and hot flashes. I'm like, I bet you do.
You know, awful.
I bet you do. Yeah. And then we can't leave out our friend testosterone. Testosterone supports kind of that risk-taking, spatial ability, and motivation. We talk about that a lot with, I mean, testosterone is helpful with brain fog, but I think more that it just kind of like is more arousing like that. It is exciting to the brain and kind of gets that motivation going. But yeah, so we're just going to kind of go through, when we titled this episode, we titled it Memory, Mood, Mental Clarity, and Migraines. So we're just kind of going to go through each of those things. So the first thing we're going to talk about is brain fog, memory, and focus. I feel like brain fog is one of the most common things that we see on our list of symptoms that we give people. I feel like brain fog is always on there. And I feel like that it's one of the earlier.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say. Yeah. But if I see somebody in their like late 30s, early 40s, one of the reasons they're here is, right? Chelsea's like, me.
Yeah.
Same. I mean, one of the reasons that they're here is like brain fog, and yeah, it's sad to hear some of these people's stories too about how severe their brain fog is.
Mhm.
Like literally like can't function and do their jobs.
I know. And
So
I mean, brain fog is not early dementia. It's not like if you have brain fog, you're going to get dementia,
Right.
right? But it is a true phenomenon. It's not like just in your head that you've kind of made it up either. I mean, it is a real thing. But it's sort of like we talk about with pregnancy. Just because you have that subchorionic hemorrhage doesn't mean you're going to miscarry.
Mhm.
They're not correlated directly like that. And so it's not, does not mean you're going to get dementia just because you have brain fog. But so, Chelsea, do you see women thinking that they have early dementia? I mean, we kind of talked about that a
Yes,
second ago.
all the time. Yes.
Yeah.
And in those visits, I always want to rule out the worst case scenario, right?
Right.
So they don't have a brain tumor or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I do always do an MRI of the
Mhm.
brain and argue with insurance if they don't want to pay for it,
Yeah.
just to make sure there's not any underlying issues. But then just getting a really good history from the patient and actually listening, because
Have
you
to battle.
you just gotta listen. Family history, go over their medications, make sure that's not playing a role, because one of the migraine medications we use is Topamax. Well, people call it Dopamax because it literally makes you have brain fog so bad.
Uh-huh.
So just really listening to the patients and then asking them, do you have headaches? Because a lot of people don't correlate, the different phases of a migraine, which the prodrome, which is before the headache, and the postdrome, after the headache. Brain fog is one of those symptoms.
Gotcha.
So a lot of people don't put all that together.
Yeah, and if you nerd out about that, like Topamax is a serotonin sort of blocker, right, in the brain. And so if we decrease our serotonin, we're going to have a little bit of brain fog. And so that makes sense that Topamax would do that. Or it makes sense that your prodrome, that feeling you get right before your migraine, when maybe your serotonin is dropping, which we'll explain in a minute why estrogen plays into that. But that prodrome is probably going to give you some brain fog, because serotonin and mental function and brain fog are so interconnected.
Yep. And so these women come in, 30s, 40s, and they have migraines. And then on top of that, their estrogen's, starting to drop. And so it's like a double whammy.
Yeah, I know. So we have a bunch of studies that show that verbal memory and executive function can dip in the menopause transition, especially like in women. They directly kind of tied it mostly to women that have sleep disturbances and hot flashes, which, I mean, I feel like if you're having a hot flash and you're in a menopause, we know you have a lack of estrogen. I mean, that's like a telltale sign. And so that makes sense to me. But that all helps support the message that the brain does feel the hormone transition, and that the brain fog and forgetfulness that many women report obviously is a real and measurable thing, because they've directly shown it in these studies. But fortunately, most of these changes are temporary, and there are things that we can do to fix them. Interestingly, they find that post-menopause, these cognitive scores rebound and kind of go back to where they were pre-menopause. So it's like, if you want to do nothing and just ride it out, I mean, don't recommend, but you could do that, and it like will get better, right? So the stability in your brain of just having nothing is going to be better than the up and down roller coaster. So the roller coaster of perimenopause, I would say, is when it's the worst. Because once you hit menopause, that 1 year after your last period, you have no estrogen, and at least to your brain, that's stable.
Yeah. And that's what the brain likes. We talk about that a lot. Like this up and down spike and dip of perimenopause hormone fluctuations. That's like why we get all these cognitive brain symptoms. But yeah, once you are like past all of that, that's like calming on the brain.
That's right. And so the SWAN study was the one that showed that women with more sleep disturbances or worse hot flashes were more likely to have these cognitive dips. And then the SWAN study also was the one that showed us that we get a little rebound and we get better once we stabilize our hormones. You could also stabilize your hormones by taking some. So, so Chelsea, how does estrogen influence dopamine and that attention regulation? Like if we're thinking about just that focus and ADHD type stuff.
Yes. So estrogen modulates dopamine in several regions of the brain, but central for attention and motivation and executive function. So especially estradiol, which I know you use a lot of that, right?
Yes, that's the bioidentical. Yeah, that's what we're using.
So it increases dopamine synthesis and release. It enhances dopamine receptors and it reduces the reuptake.
Right.
So,
yep. Hang out there longer.
Allows dopamine to be active longer in the neurons and the synapse.
Yeah. Do you see, I mean, you may not, because you don't prescribe hormones, right?
I do not.
Yeah.
That's why I send everybody.
I know. And that's totally fine. We understand that, like, some people may know the benefits, but may not be, comfortable prescribing. Listen, I'm not prescribing most people's migraine medicine, so I get it. Yeah. But do you feel like that hormone therapy improves people's, like, brain fog and focus and all that?
I do. And I've seen, like, firsthand patients that come back to me after y'all have done your magic and, they feel like they have their life back.
Yeah.
No migraines and their hormones are good. It's like the sweet spot.
Yeah.
Good. And I mean, I'm sure, what you're doing on your side with migraine medicines and stuff like that is obviously
I think the holistic approach is
I love it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever deal with like ADHD? Do you prescribe the stimulant medications and things like that?
So in the state of Arkansas, nurse practitioners cannot prescribe like methylphenidate or Adderall.
Yeah.
But I do use like modafinil occasionally. Most of the time it's for like fatigue related to MS or, something like that. But yes, I do see lots of patients that are on stimulants but their brain fog doesn't really get that much better.
Yeah. And I feel like, obviously the first step to somebody who already had ADHD is going to be like, well, just up your ADHD medicine, which is one approach for sure. But I think, looking at hormones, like you said, it just offers more like a holistic type of thing. So our next M word, mood. So we're going to talk about mood, anxiety, and depression. So obviously those are like all very neurologically induced states. Like we talk about that with libido all the time. That is a mood, really.
Right.
But estrogen helps regulate serotonin and dopamine. Those are both kind of those feel-good hormones. And like Chelsea was just talking about, dopamine is super involved in like ADHD and kind of that brain function as far as like executive decision making. And then serotonin, we think of more just like mood, like for anxiety, depression. Like when we are prescribing SSRIs like Paxil, Prozac, Zoloft, we are trying to increase somebody's serotonin. So estrogen helps regulate that all by itself. And when estrogen drops, it can interfere with that serotonin production and it can trigger mood changes, anxiety, or even worsen like some existing depression.
And that's why like some women who've never had anxiety before, these like hormonal changes and stuff kind of really start to feel it. And then if you've had it or you have anxiety or have depression, sometimes it worsens like during perimenopause and menopause.
Yeah. Again, I feel like anxiety and brain fog are both right up there with like the first things people notice.
So like I'm having this anxiety out of nowhere. Like nothing in my life has changed. Kids are still doing their thing. I'm still working, whatever. Like all the things are still the same. And like I'm waking up at night like panicked, for no reason. Yeah.
I know. And again, the good old SWAN study, the study of women across the nations, and other trials all found that mood symptoms peak in late perimenopause when estrogen levels are so unsteady. And then there have been some randomized controlled trials that have shown that transdermal estrogen can improve depressive symptoms in perimenopausal women. And so, yeah, the rapid estrogen swings of perimenopause combined with your low progesterone is a bad setup for an emotional roller coaster because your progesterone is kind of what is calming and may help you sleep better. And then, yeah, estrogen is kind of regulating that serotonin, dopamine. So you start messing with both of those, and we're really, a setup for a problem. So, again, postmenopause is more steady. We have a steady state of none, but again, the brain likes that better, and we do have a little less mood volatility. So, but yeah, they can kind of have just a sustained low mood or almost like an apathy. Just with a low estrogen state that is postmenopause, but it's at least, I would say, more like depressive stuff postmenopause and more anxiety stuff perimenopause.
Yeah. That's really what I hear a lot with postmenopause women, like, women that have gone more than a year without a period, haven't done any hormone replacement therapy yet. They're like, I literally just don't care really about anything. Like, I love my kids, I love my family, but don't care if I just don't get out of bed either. And they've never had a history of like depression or anything in the past. This is all kind of newer things.
I know. And it's always hard for, like, again, I know that you're not really like treating, but in hormone providers and people who are treating with hormones, it's like, well, do we use progesterone or estrogen? I mean, if you're deficient in both, use both. But if you're still making your estrogen, there is a place where you can try to come in and sort of stabilize those peaks and valleys. That may be helpful. But in perimenopause, I mean, really, we're more of a progesterone deficiency, and it's about kind of replacing that progesterone. If you start messing with people's estrogen too much in perimenopause, you may get yourself into some bleeding problems. And so that gets a little harder and is much more nuanced. You can do it, but again, like, it's going to take a pretty skilled, experienced hormone provider to do that. But I think, I mean, even for like a PCP or, just very basic, I mean, perimenopause 101 is like, you need some progesterone.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can do that every day.
You can do that. Yeah. With a uterus, without a uterus.
Yeah.
By itself, cyclic, all the time. Just do it.
Yes. Just say, hey, I'm going to start you on this, and you can follow up with the hormone girls.
Yeah.
We'll tell you, good job.
And then we've talked about it before, but progesterone really has to be oral if you're going to get those GABA calming sort of anti-anxiety, sleep type things. And so you can buy topical progesterone on Amazon, and that's fine. You're probably not going to hurt anything, but you're probably not going to help anything either. You're just not going to absorb the giant molecule that is progesterone across the skin, which is, I'm pretty sure, why it's allowed to be sold on Amazon. But
don't waste your money. Just come get a prescription of it. It's like pennies. It's the cheapest thing to get.
Yeah. And then just one more little kind of swift kick in the butt for our mood is that estrogen interacts with cortisol. We've talked about this before too, but we release more cortisol to the exact same stress without estrogen. So with estrogen on board, it's kind of the damper at the level of like the hypothalamus where that whole feedback loop stuff gets started. Estrogen kind of is the damper for that, and we won't have as much cortisol and stress hormone running around if we've got some estrogen on board. If you're extremely high or extremely low, like hello, roller coaster perimenopause, then that's going to make that worse. Or like after menopause, when you're extremely low all the time, you're going to, potentially be overproducing some cortisol. And cortisol is just going to amplify that anxiety and mood volatility. Like, it's just going to make it all feel worse.
Along with like inflammation and weight gain and all of that. I mean, we always talk about all of the cortisol things.
All the cortisol things. But that to me is like when you hear people say, I am tired but wired.
Yep.
It's like that's their cortisol talking to them. Like, that is what will not let them turn it off. Yeah. So how would a neurologist tell whether like mood changes are hormone related or something else? Like, I'm sure people come to you just like, I feel like a whole different person. Do I have a brain tumor? Do I have, how do you kind of walk through that?
So again, history.
Yeah.
Just looking for any of patterns that are kind of parallel to their mood problems or anxiety. Because if you're have a issue, depression or anxiety all the time versus just part of the month or a couple of days before your cycle, that can kind of explain it a little bit better.
Yep.
No, so much goes back to just listening to the patient. Yeah. And I feel like it helps a lot too if you like know your patient, because if you don't know somebody and they just walk in the door and tell you they have terrible anxiety, it's like, well, maybe I've known you for like 10 years and you've always been tightly wound, or maybe you're like, man, you've been the chillest person ever. So I think it helps when you've been in practice for a while and you're kind of building, you've seen patients over and over. Or like for me, I feel like we are in a unique place where I get to see people like when they just got married and they don't have any babies, and then I see them through pregnancy, and then I'm still seeing them and they're becoming perimenopausal, and I'm like, whoa, you've been the most chill person ever, and now we're having, so that helps a lot too.
That's gonna be my red flag for perimenopause. You're Courtney, you used to be really chill.
What's
wrong with you?
Yeah, because you're never.
That's gonna be the day we know.
I mean, it's like you've been walking around like this since you were like 2, so you've been anxious. Your mom and dad are that way.
Your call days. Just the days you're on call. Don't even talk to her.
Oh no. And then what's your approach for like mood, depression, anxiety, that type of stuff? Would you say that you're like, here's your SSRI, or like, go see a counselor? Or
so again, I think more of a holistic approach is better.
Yeah.
But you also again have to know that patient. If their finances are strapped and time strapped, and that that they're not going to go to counseling, that they're not going to be able to come see you guys or whatever. I mean, I tell patients all the time, if your ankle's messed up, we'll help fix your ankle. If your mood's messed up, we help fix your mood.
Yeah.
So I think the world would be a better place if everybody was on SSRI.
That's right.
I kind of agree with that too.
And I also want to make sure
Lexapro in their life
that they're willing to take it,
Yeah.
Because if they're going to take it for a couple weeks or a couple months and then stop it suddenly, they'll be up the creek with that too. So
yeah. Definitely.
So not really a straight answer, but
that area.
Yeah. Do you ever use those biomarkers that help like determine who metabolizes? This is where we're getting into
the gene site testing.
Yeah, like liver gut stuff, but how you metabolize this?
So I have not personally ordered that, but I've seen it, and it's really cool.
I think it's so cool.
Yeah, so I think it's fairly expensive.
Yeah. But we don't order it a lot either because
I don't think insurance really covers it that much, but I think a lot of primary care doctors can do it, and it's very helpful because, these patients are on SSRI after SSRI, and they're like, what is wrong with me?
Yeah.
I'm still moody. I'm still not happy.
Maybe it's your hormones.
I mean,
right.
But also they may need like duloxetine,
right?
Instead of Lexapro,
right?
So, and then most patients, duloxetine doesn't do anything, but Lexapro does. So it's just everybody's different.
Yeah,
I think it's very helpful though.
Yeah, I do think that those things are good, but I think it's also a red flag if you're like doing multiple SSRIs and having no improvement. Maybe it's time to like look at other things, But okay. We're at your section. This is it. This is like your place. Menopause and migraines. So this is Chelsea's jam, her specialty.
You love migraines as much as we love hormones.
This is just headache disorders. Yes. Like, I mean, migraines, it's a walk in the park. I mean, I got migraines, I can get them gone. But
love that.
Yes, I love them. And perimenopause equals migraines.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
So that was the first question is, do you think migraines are more common in perimenopause and menopause?
Yeah. So the dropping and the spiking, unpredictable all the time. It's just disaster.
I know. And so I think it would be good for listeners for you to just explain, because I feel like most people know what migraine is. They're just like, yeah, it's a real bad headache, right? But I think it would be interesting for you to explain what's a migraine versus what, the other headaches. Like,
Yes.
can you just quick and
So-
dirty rundown on the different types?
Yes. So one of my pet peeves is actually when people come in and say, "Oh no, I don't have migraines. I have sinus headaches." I read statistics one time, and it's like 80% of people that think they have sinus headaches have migraines.
Or the other way around, people call every headache a migraine. It's
Yeah.
like maybe it's just a
Yeah.
headache.
So to diagnose migraine, you have to have 2 of the 3, either sensitivity to sound, light, or nausea. So you have to have 2 of 3 of those.
Okay.
Which even if patients say, I don't have that. I'm like, okay, well, do you prefer to go lay down in a dark, quiet room?
Right.
9 times out of 10, the answer is yes.
Mm-hmm.
But when I talk about other headache disorders like trigeminal neuralgia, that burning electrical shock type pain, that's actually more common in postmenopausal women.
Mm-hmm.
But migraine in general has to last 4 hours or more. So we have those sharp shooting pains, head pains. Those are more like a cluster headache or trigeminal autonomic cephalgias. Telling y'all,
That's a big word.
yes, lots of big words.
Yeah.
It just all boils down to listening to all the keys and clues.
Yeah. And then like when people say cluster headache, what's that?
Cluster headaches is when you may have a headache like every single day, sharp shooting, and then you go periods of time with no pain at all.
Yeah, but those wouldn't necessarily have like the light and sound and nausea with them.
No, sometimes, but no, typically they'll sweat more, their eyes will water, their nose will get stopped up or run.
Okay.
More of those autonomic symptoms.
And then the tension headaches.
Tension headaches, typically they're in the temples on both sides, and jaw clenching, stress, not sleeping well, all those types of things.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's helpful when we're talking about migraine just to know exactly.
Yeah.
And so do you think that like all the headaches get worse in perimenopause, menopause, or it's just mostly like migraine related?
Migraine related, typically.
Yeah.
Like if somebody had diagnosed migraines before and then they go through perimenopause, it gets worse.
So typically I hear like whenever I first started my period, my headaches were horrible. I had to go home from school.
Okay.
Then it got a little bit better in college. And then around the time they start having kids, that's
Starts up
Yep.
again.
Yep.
Interesting.
And then migraines with pregnancy, they get better. Or
they typically
worse?
get better.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's what we were always taught is that most, and interestingly enough, what your hormones doing are surging. Like you have a lot of them. And so a lot of hormone is typically going to be. Now, I mean, hormones are weird in that too much is not always a good thing.
Mhm.
And you'll definitely hear people say that like birth control pills made their migraines worse.
Yes.
I mean, I hear that sometimes too. But yeah, in general, pregnancy is going to help them.
Yep.
Yeah. And it helps. I know you started the multiple sclerosis clinic, but I think it's crazy that it helps things like that. Like people's Crohn's gets better. People's all those like autoimmune things get
Hormones
better.
are protective to the
Yeah.
brain.
Yeah, for sure.
Very cool.
So, do you like if you already have somebody on migraine medications and then they hit perimenopause, do you have to adjust their migraine medication, or do you recommend like hormone medication or both? Or
So both.
yeah.
A lot of times, if their migraines get worse, I will kind of tweak what we're doing. Also at the same time, waiting to get in to see you guys.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of, where they are at that stage of life.
Yeah.
Are they still on birth control, or do they have is it oral birth control, IUD? Have they had a, partial or a complete hysterectomy? It just really depends on their story. But yes, to answer your question, I tweak what we're doing, maybe add on Botox or,
Yeah. Well, yeah. And like you were saying earlier, we just have lots of different medications for migraine now.
Yeah.
I mean, as opposed to like when I trained or when I was in med school, it was like triptans, you know, but now there's these whole other classes of medications and Botox. And,
Yep. So I tell patients, you know, if your headaches aren't under control, go to a different provider and, you know, make sure that your needs are being met, because there's so many options.
Yeah.
You know, and different providers have different ideas.
That's right. Yeah. And so if we want to nerd out about why is it that perimenopause makes this bad, it's those brain serotonin levels. And so serotonin helps calm nerve signals and blood vessels in the brain. In general, it's kind of like a constricting type on the blood vessels. So overdilation of your blood vessels is what causes a headache. So if you think about like what's in a lot of headache medications, there's sometimes some caffeine. It's like, well, we're trying to vasoconstrict, you know?
Right.
And so, yeah, it's this overdilation of those blood vessels and then those overfiring of those nerve signals. And then the brainstem and the trigeminal nerve become hypersensitive. And that's when kind of that pounding begins.
Yep.
You may have a whole different explanation of this than me. This is like the gynecologist explaining why migraines happen.
So estrogen just affects migraines through multiple things, kind of how you were saying, serotonin regulation, vascular tone. So estrogen stabilizes those blood vessels. And then withdrawal from that causes vasodilation and pain.
Yeah.
And low estrogen, low serotonin, more migraines. And then, like you said, estrogen modulates the trigeminal pain pathways. So sudden drops activate them, causing more pain. Estrogen decline increases neuroinflammation, and it causes activation of the calcitonin gene receptor peptide that we were talking about earlier. So the new class of migraine medications are called anti-CGRP, or anti-calcitonin gene receptor peptides. That's like Ubrelvy, Nurtec, Emgality, Ajovy, Qulipta.
I took Nurtec one time and it was amazing.
Amazing. Yes. So what it does is either binds or blocks the release of that peptide. So it either gets rid of the headache or prevents it from occurring. So,
yeah.
Lots of things going on up there.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's interesting that not only does estrogen kind of modulate that serotonin, but it also makes serotonin receptors more sensitive. Like it, you know, just kind of like we were talking about, it does in dopamine. It makes more serotonin exist, and then it makes the receptors more sensitive to it, and it makes it kind of hang around in that synapse longer. So just all around, estrogen has, you know, a beneficial effect on that. Or once menopause is reached and you just have none and you're stable in that none, then migraines would often improve, you know, even if you did nothing, even if you suffered your way through perimenopause, which we've talked about can be like 7 to 10 years. I mean, that's a long time, you know? So if we want to stabilize it in the meantime and kind of get you through that, there is hope on the other side in that you will stop swinging all around. And then I think like we were talking about before, you know, we were recording, we were talking about birth control pills and migraines. So I think we need to have a conversation about birth control pills and migraines, because there's a lot out there that like you can't take birth control if you have migraines, which is not always true. And then we need to talk about migraines and hormone replacement therapy, because birth control pills and hormone replacement therapy are not the same thing. So
that's correct. And one thing I also want to mention is menstrual migraines. So there is different treatment options for menstrual migraines. So if that's something that you suffer from, definitely that can be addressed. Kind of like a mini prevention or prophylaxis. Not a lot of people are treated that way, but it's definitely helpful, because I mean, that's half of the month.
I mean, just kind of what's happening when you're on your period is all your hormones are bottomed out. And so if we stop that bottoming out, then a lot of times we will improve a migraine. So so I think, you know, what really you hear is that if you have migraines, you can't take birth control pills. I think what people are describing is they're talking about migraine with aura. And so just for our listeners, like, what is an aura? What does that mean?
So in school, we learned that an aura is like when you see things, or, you know, you can't see, blurred vision. rainbows, kaleidoscope, all the things. But an aura is just any symptoms that immediately precipitates the pain. So 5 to 60 minutes before the initiation of pain. It could be a sensory aura. So some patients will say they feel like water's flowing over one side of their face, or
Oh,
some people,
so weird.
yep, motor aura. So some people will go to the emergency room thinking they had a stroke.
Mhm.
You know, they have weakness to one side, but it gets better. So
I used to have a nurse like that. Her whole like side of her face would almost go numb and her smile would be asymmetric.
and the weird thing about it is you can have an aura without a headache. And so you can have these symptoms and the head pain never proceeds.
Yeah.
You
and
tell
they,
patients that and they think you're crazy.
no, yeah. And then they get sort of diagnosed or sent, for workup of a stroke. I mean,
Mhm.
which is a good thing, but then it ends up being like, no, that was just atypical migraine. kind of
Yeah.
thing.
And you treat them for migraines and
Wow.
they're
Yeah.
go away.
That's crazy. I mean, I'm pretty sure I've never had an aura, but yeah, migraine with aura
It's a
is
contraindication.
a contraindication to birth control pills,
Mhm.
but not necessarily hormone replacement therapy. So birth control pills are synthetic. We're talking about ethinyl estradiol, and then we're talking about a progestin. There's a whole bunch of different progestins. It's almost always ethinyl estradiol. There's one birth control now that is a different type of estrogen, but literally the other 500 out there are ethinyl estradiol, and then a type of progestin. So norethindrone, levonorgestrel, drospirenone, those are all progestins. So those are going to increase your risk of a blood clot. And so we don't talk about that enough when we put people on birth control, but that is true. And then migraine with aura, those people have 2 times the risk of a stroke. And so kind of to combine the two of those, combined birth control pills with migraine with aura, we think is too much of a risk for a stroke, and therefore it's contraindicated. So the World Health Organization, ACOG, like everybody's aligned on that. And they say that migraine with aura is an unacceptable health risk and do not use. So contraindicated. But in that case, like if you still, like if you're listening and you're like, well, what the heck? I still need some birth control. You can still use progestin only methods. So there's progestin only pills, there's IUDs, there's next one on arm implants. There's other methods of birth control that you can use, but you're not supposed to use a combined oral contraceptive pill if you have the aura. If you just have migraines, it's okay. And then we use birth control pills a lot. If people do not have migraine with aura, we use birth control pills a lot to prevent those menstrual migraines. But the key there is that you really want to be continuously taking them. You wouldn't want to take the placebo pills where you bottom out off of the hormones. And so you either take them continuously and you don't do the pill-free week, or you may add back a little low-dose estradiol during that pill-free week. To me, it seems easier just to run the packs together. But then hormone replacement therapy is not the same. And so just because you have migraine with aura and you couldn't take birth control pills doesn't mean, okay, well, then I can't ever take hormone replacement therapy either. So those are not the same in that hormone replacement therapy is bioidentical. It's not synthetic. It's not quite as strong. Like we are not, I mean, if you just think about it from a standpoint, we are not giving people hormone replacement therapy at a strong enough dose to totally suppress ovulation. Like that's what a birth control pill is trying to do. So it is a much higher dose. And then hormone replacement therapy is bioidentical. So we're using straight up estradiol and natural progesterone. And then also if we can use transdermal estradiol, we bypass the liver and we bypass any of that clotting risk type stuff. And so there have been studies showing that we have no increased risk of stroke if we're using transdermal estradiol at less than that 0.05 dose. And so even in migraine with aura. So I don't want people to think like that they can't take a birth control pill, so they can't take hormone replacement therapy, because those are two different things. And it is like one of my biggest pet peeves that people interchangeably use the two of those kind of as that they're both hormone replacement. They both are hormones, but they're just way different. So what do you think are some of the most common like migraine triggers or things that people could avoid?
So I have patients keep a diary. There's an app called Migraine Buddy that if they don't want to have like a sheet of paper, Since 2025.
Yeah.
But I tell them whenever you get a headache or a migraine, I want you to think back. What have you eaten? What have you drank? What have you not eaten? What have you not drank? How'd you sleep the night before? Weather changes, correlation to where you are on your cycle.
Right.
Just the more details, the better. And then we just look for anything that is a trend. Artificial sweeteners. They're called artificial for a reason.
Yeah.
Our bodies were not meant to consume those. So I think that's a huge trigger, especially for vertigo, is artificial sweeteners. Sugars, carbs, not eating, just an unhealthy lifestyle.
Right.
That sounds
right. All the inflammatory things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Get that cortisol going.
Yeah.
And we just did a big series on gut health and liver detox and things like that. So we talked about that serotonin is 90 to 95% produced in the gut. But what I found interesting when writing this episode, because I was thinking to myself, like, well, maybe we could help our serotonin too by just that gut health stuff that we're talking about. But that serotonin that you're producing in your gut does not cross the blood-brain. I can't say that. Blood-brain barrier. And so it's not the same as the serotonin in your brain. So it's not like you can just get your gut health all in check and make good serotonin and then be happier and not get a migraine, right?
That's right. So like you said, the gut and the brain, they're bidirectional. The vagus nerve, immune signals, neurotransmitters, especially serotonin, like you're talking about, 90% made in the gut. But also the microbiome that regulates like the inflammation and all the neurochemical balance. So when the gut's dysregulated, obviously the brain is out of whack too. So inflammation and that leaky gut. I don't know if y'all talked about that.
Yeah, we did a little bit. Yeah, I know. And when you really get down to it, especially in that functional medicine space, it kind of all goes back to the gut. And being healthier with less inflammation and things like that. So, but I think that it's interesting to know that gut serotonin is not the same as our brain serotonin, and that like when you take a triptan, it's not affecting your gut serotonin.
No, it's not.
It's like so specific to the brain. So just a little interesting fact that I learned. Okay, so now we're just going to talk about like what can we do about it, how to support your brain during menopause, how to feel better, less mood changes, less brain fog, less migraines, all that kind of stuff. So what is something that you think women can do in midlife to protect their long-term brain health?
Exercise. I know that's so cliche, but focus on anti-inflammatory, brain health, diet. I kind of beat that. Like we talk about it all the time. Like you have to pay attention to what you're eating and your lifestyle. Sleeping. I'll always make sure that patients don't have sleep apnea. There's a strong correlation between obstructive sleep apnea and brain health. Stabilizing hormones when appropriate. Managing stress, but also metabolic and vascular health. Making sure that they don't have diabetes or, uncontrolled hypertension, all those things. Really just pay attention to the whole person and not just one thing that some providers tend to get stuck on.
I know. And it's really so interesting because when you really get down to it, like with breast cancer or like with Alzheimer's or all these things that we're so scared of, it's so much more modulated by just like you're talking about that inflammatory like state than it is like the one thing you do. Like everybody's so obsessed with I can't take a hormone because that's going to give me breast cancer, and it's like what about the entire inflammatory lifestyle you're living?
Yeah, and one of my biggest pet peeves too is when patients they retire and then what do? They sit in a recliner and watch TV all day long.
Right.
We weren't meant to be sedentary individuals. Like we were meant to be active. And I mean, think about it back in the day. I mean, people were like tending a farm and a field like in their 90s. Like
Right.
That's how you stay healthy. And that's also how your brain stays healthy too.
It's a famous quote on this podcast, move your ass. And so
Yes.
here we are on the
Yes.
Brain podcast talking about moving your ass.
Yeah.
Moving.
Yes. I
Yeah.
love that. I think I need a sign because
Yeah.
move your ass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. And so how early should we be thinking about brain health in relation to hormones? I know you were talking about this a second ago with Alzheimer's and us thinking that the clues may be there 30 years
Yeah.
beforehand.
Yeah. So I think just as soon as any of the symptoms pop up, don't ignore it and be proactive. Because nobody else is going to be proactive if the patient's not.
Yeah.
That's right.
I know. And I think the more and more data that comes out, I'm talking about right now, not 15 years from now, what we're going to, finally be publicly saying, like the data that's coming out, if you follow journal articles in this space, is that the earlier we can intervene with hormones, the better.
Yeah.
And the more protective. If we're really after the protective benefits for your heart and your bones and your brain, I mean, the earlier, the better.
Right.
Yeah. And then if you had to say 3 brain supporting habits for women in their 40s and 50s, what would it be?
Exercise.
Move your ass.
Move your ass. Supplements.
Yes.
And because I feel like supplements are easier for people than changing your diet. So supplement / diet and be socially involved and
Keep your brain working.
yeah. I mean, this sounds so cliche, but like puzzles and
That's like the moving your ass version for your brain, right?
Yes.
It's like
Ditto and all the things.
Yeah.
Mahjong. Like,
Yeah.
don't just sit there and watch Fox News. Like,
right.
Right.
Or CNN or really just any of that.
yeah, it's like garbage
Yeah.
for your brain.
Yeah.
Yes. So supplements or diet, exercise, and just be active and involved.
So let's talk about some supplements. Like we talk about magnesium a lot
I love
and being
magnesium.
good for anxiety and sleep. But then as far as like supplements that are good for your brain health, like which ones are you thinking?
Omega-3 fatty
Yes.
acids.
Yes.
And I love magnesium with ashwagandha.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I know ashwagandha, you have to be careful with medication interactions, but if you don't have any, I love ashwagandha. Vitamin D,
Mm-hmm.
and B2 or riboflavin.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't drink plenty of water, it can turn your urine orange, but you don't have to stop it.
Just drink more water.
Just drink more water. Yeah. So those would be my
Yeah. And I think
and
ashwagandha.
B12.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that ashwagandha is so interesting too because it's so tied into that cortisol and inflammatory type of pathway. And so we talk about it a lot for like people's high cortisol when we're seeing like low DHEA, high cortisol, that type of picture.
So there's a magnesium and ashwagandha blend by New Chapter.
Oh,
I really like that brand. It's pretty clean.
Yeah.
But that way you don't have to worry about like finding 2 different.
Yeah. One
brands.
time I got some ashwagandha powder and I decided I was going to sprinkle in my coffee and it's disgusting taste, by the way.
Just taking a pill.
Another
Lesson learned.
Another tip and trick, which y'all are gonna think I'm crazy, is beef liver capsules.
I've heard a lot of people talking about these.
Yeah. I'm not eating a beef liver, but I might make it in a
And
capsule.
I actually try to dehydrate my own beef liver, and I
Oh my
quickly
gosh.
threw it away because it is not
Yeah.
pleasant. But yeah, you can get it online.
Yeah.
But I've seen a big difference, like personally. taking it.
Really?
Mhm.
Yeah.
What do you feel like
Especially-
it's helped?
Well, I'll say energy. but I'm like so tired right now. But energy and just overall feeling better.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just like ran down.
Yep.
Especially if you can't tolerate like over the counter iron.
Yes.
So many people, get constipated and
Mhm.
stomach problems, all the things. Yeah.
Because we talk about iron a lot.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean 9 times out of 10 people can't tolerate it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Or they'll say they're going to, and then, they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the biggest obstacle is price for the beef liver.
Okay.
I haven't found a real inexpensive alternative, but
Yeah.
So if y'all find any, let me know.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll be on the lookout now. That's going to be my next supplement to look for.
Yeah.
too.
Let me know.
Yes.
Let me know.
Yeah.
Well, I love that. I love that you've been on here, and I just one more thing is because I know I have a lot of things on my list that are like so exciting. Like in our world, it's like that we're probably going to get a female dosed testosterone in the next couple years.
Yeah.
And that's been such a big deal. Like, what is like so exciting and such a big deal in the neurology space right now?
Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
big deal right now. And with the biomarker test and really just trying to change. I mean, if we're proactive, I mean, we could change like the whole culture of like nursing homes.
Yeah.
So Alzheimer's is a big, big area.
Telling you, like, I mean, estrogen, like we've talked about this with just the vaginal estrogen. Like we could if we could just vaginal estrogen everyone in the nursing home, we wouldn't see urosepsis and things like that. But like, what if we just had estrogen in general and then we just had, less Alzheimer's?
Yeah. And so if we can identify it early, now we have FDA approved medications that is supposed to stop it from progressing. So, but when patients come in and they already have significant cognitive problems, it's not ethical, really. I mean, I still talk to them about the medications, but it's not really ethical to delay, or they say extend the runway. That's what.
But it's all about like preventative.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
things
Being proactive.
And
no, like I said, nobody's going to be accountable if you're not.
Well, and just since 1996, we've been knowing this. So here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like brain
So
stuff, I mean, like dementia, Alzheimer's, unless you have somebody like your grandma or somebody had it, it's probably not on your brain.
Yeah.
Not like you're not thinking about it. But
Yeah.
like now's the time that we be thinking about
Well,
it.
and I really,
Like, I want to get that tested.
I know. And my hope is that, primary care doctors get on board.
Yeah. I know. I feel like medicine is moving to such like a preventative kind of thing. So like, why not do that?
I mean, I hope that it's going to be just like a mammogram or colonoscopy, PSA.
I mean, we do like genetic testing for cancers and stuff, that's stuff that we talk about here. And yeah, I think that's so cool.
Yep.
Let's do that with the brain.
Yep.
Okay, we're just going to finish up with just rapid fire Q&A. These are just going to be like, real quick. But menopause causes dementia.
False.
Yes, false. Absolutely. False.
Yes. There's a temporary dip in cognitive function, but it's not the same as dementia, and it doesn't last forever. So, and then
Memory problems is not a normal part of aging.
right.
I tell patients that all the time.
Yeah.
So I have patients that are in their 90s and they're building birdhouses and such.
Yeah.
Like, when people come in and they say, "Oh, I'm just getting old. I'm 65." I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Yes, it's like the pelvic health girls say, like peeing on yourself is never normal.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it's not like, oh, I've had a couple of babies, it's normal that I pee on myself. Like, no, that's never normal.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Brain fog is just something you have to live with.
No.
Yes, lifestyle stress management and sometimes hormone therapy can help clear the fog. And then next, estrogen is bad for your brain.
Absolutely not.
I think if
Absolutely
you
not.
listen to any of this podcast, you would realize that it's not.
Yeah, it's not. No, it's good for the brain.
Yes, and it is actually protective in the right context. Timing and dosing matter a lot here. So the earlier the better, and we may have more stable and less inflammatory responses by using some transdermal. Again, that's super nuanced stuff, but see somebody who specializes in this, make an appointment, come talk to us. Chelsea is your migraine girl. She's your neuro girl. So we are so lucky that we have a community of people who are all willing to like nerd out and talk about hormones with us. So I appreciate so much.
Thank you for
being on this podcast.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Next week, we are going to continue this series, Head to Toe Menopause, and we're going to kind of go just maybe slightly back up, but to hair.
That's always a big one.
Yeah. So
Like
staying in the head. Yeah.
Yeah. And just a quick note that everything we talk about here is for informational and supportive purposes only and is not medical advice. There's no doctor-patient relationship established on this format. Your body is unique, so be sure to talk to your healthcare provider before making any changes.
Yes, if this episode resonated with you, share it with a friend who is struggling to be heard, and let's keep breaking the stigma together. Follow us on Hump Day Hormones on Instagram or Facebook, also the Women's Clinic at arobgyn.com, and email us your questions for the show, humpdayhormones@gmail.com. And we will see you next Wednesday for the hairy truth about menopause. Bye.
Oh my God.